Ladies and gentlemen, this is DVP World. You're watching another edition of Break the Fake, where we debunk fake news and combat false narratives. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and let's get rolling. Today, we're tackling the big question in global politics. Can a rushed peace deal between the United States and Russia really end the war in Ukraine? Or would it just be appeasement in disguise? Now, let's see whether this deal could actually bring lasting peace, or if it's a way to kick the can down the road. So, right now, US officials are in Saudi Arabia engaging in talks with Russia. The goal? A settlement that could bring an end to the war. But if Ukraine is sidelined, that's a diplomatic disaster waiting to happen. Now, for this deal to work, two things must happen. There must be real security guarantees for Ukraine, and Russia must be held accountable. And the only way to achieve that, well, Ukraine must be involved. You know, the countries that's actually fighting the war. History shows that deals excluding Ukraine, like the Minsk Accords and the Budapest Memorandum, ended in disaster. Russia, turns out, has a pattern: sign agreements and break them. It's like playing poker with someone who keeps pocketing your chips. At some point, you stop sitting at the table. If a peace deal fails to offer Ukraine NATO membership or at least a similarly ironclad security guarantee, then it's not a peace deal. It's just pressing pause until Russia feels like invading again. And then there's the money. Western sanctions were supposed to cripple Russia's economy, but loopholes keep the cash flowing through third parties like India and China. A peace deal that ignores these gaps just gives Russia a financial recharge. Want to force Russia to negotiate seriously? Close those loopholes first. Maybe try sanctions that don't come with a how-to guide on avoiding them. Now, the idea that a rush peace deal will secure lasting stability, not exactly confidence-inspiring. A bad peace deal isn't peace. It's just setting up the next war, but with fancier paper signing ceremonies. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says there's no thought of territorial concessions to Ukraine. No deals, no trade-offs, no negotiations. And he's making this statement right before high-level talks with the US in Saudi Arabia. Now first, let's talk about what's already on board. Russia annexed Crimea back in 2014, fast forward to 2022, and boom, they claim 4 more regions: Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk. But, and here's the kicker, they don't actually control all of them. Some of those annexed regions, including their capitals, are still in Ukrainian hands. That's like robbing a bank only to realize that you've stolen the ATM receipt instead of the money. So when Russia says they won't make territorial concessions, are they really in position to dictate that? But wait, Lavrov throws another wrench into the mix, saying that Europe shouldn't even be involved. His words: if they're going to come up with some crafty ideas about freezing the conflict, then why invite them? Hold up. You're telling me that in a war happening in Europe, one of the key stakeholders shouldn't have a say? That's like planning a neighborhood block party and refusing to invite the homeowners because they might have opinions on, the fires you kept setting off in their backyard.
Вы хотите, чтобы вот эти вот замашки нацистские, а украинские вооруженные силы действуют еще похлеще, чем гитлеровские убийцы. Посмотрите, какие зверства они чинят на территориях. И вы хотите, чтобы даже мысль какая-то присутствовала на переговорах об урегулировании относительно того, что какие-то территории нужно еще уступить. Уступить-то как? С людьми, с русскими? Или без людей? С одними редкоземельными металлами?
Now, in the end, Lavrov's stance feels less like a firm policy and more like a kid stubbornly insisting that they meant to trip over their own shoelaces. Sure, Russia claims these territories, but actually controlling them? Well, that's a different game, one that they're not exactly winning. And as for telling Europe to butt out of a war happening in Europe, that's like crashing someone's dinner party, stealing the food, and then getting mad when they demand the plates back. Reality doesn't care about Russia's tough talk. Whether they like it or not, Ukraine, its allies, and the rest of the world aren't just going to sit back and let them call the shots. Now, just to add to the mess, Elon Musk has once again graced us with his geopolitical wisdom. Upon seeing Lavrov and Ushakov arriving in Riyadh, he declared, "Now this is what competent leadership looked like." Yes, because nothing says competence like war crimes, economic collapse, and diplomatic tantrums. Maybe next time Musk will praise North Korea's space program or offer Putin a free Tesla. Though, knowing Russia, they'd probably strip it for parts and then blame NATO when it stops working. Now, when it comes to the ongoing peace talks between US and Russia, emotions are understandably running high. The stakes couldn't be greater, and this is about Ukraine's survival, European security, and the global balance of power. So yeah, people are amped up. But with high stakes come hot takes, and some narratives have spun out of control. While the anxiety is justified, we've got to keep a clear head and not let knee-jerk reactions overshadow the actual facts. So let's break down two of the loudest narratives swirling around these negotiations. Now, narrative number one, Ukraine and Europe is being completely sidelined. The claim? US is sneaking behind Ukraine and Europe's back, striking a secret deal with Russia while leaving them out to dry. Sure, now the optics aren't really great. Ukraine and EU leaders won't be physically present at the first meeting in Riyadh, and that's enough to make people nervous. But keep in mind, the US has already clarified that while Ukraine and European leaders may not be in the rooms this time, their interests are being factored into the discussions. As US Envoy Keith Kellogg put it, if at the table means perspectives are heard and accounted for, then yeah, they are at the table. European governments have already been consulted on security guarantees, and Kellogg himself is heading to Kyiv to meet with Ukrainian leadership directly. So if this were a complete sideline job, those meetings probably wouldn't even be happening. Now, another claim making the rounds, Zelensky is being difficult, refusing to accept whatever deal the US pursues, even if it ends the war. Some portray him as an obstructionist who won't take the off-ramp when it's presented to him. This, pure misrepresentation. Zelensky isn't rejecting peace talks, he's making a very reasonable point. Ukraine needs to be part of the process, not just handed a pre-packaged deal. He's repeatedly said that Kyiv won't accept a deal that jeopardizes Ukraine's future or comes from negotiations that it wasn't involved in. That's not really stubbornness, that's just common sense. And it's not just him saying this, the US has backed him up. Kellogg explicitly said that no deal will be imposed on Ukraine. Zelensky, like any leader of a sovereign nation, has a right to make the final call on what happens to his country. That's not defiance, that's just kind of his job. Look, skepticism is fair. We have been quite critical of many aspects of this negotiation ourselves. This is global politics, not a trustful exercise. But these negotiations are complicated, still in their early phases, and requires patience. So let's keep digging into the facts for now, and we'll be there when it comes time to hit the panic button. Now, peace talks haven't even begun, but the Kremlin already knows the outcome. Because, of course, why bother negotiating when you can just dictate? According to Russia's UN representative Vasily Nebenzia, Ukraine has irreversibly lost its occupied territories. Bold words from a regime that once claimed Kyiv would fall in 3 days. But wait, there's more. Nebenzia also suggested that European leaders should stop provoking Zelensky into resisting. Classic Kremlin logic. If only Ukraine would stop defending itself, everything would be fine. And of course, Ukraine must become a neutral state because nothing says peace like a Russian boot on your neck.
Украина теперь безвозвратно потеряла не только Крым, но и Донецкую и Луганскую народные республики, и Херсонскую и Запорожскую области, вошедшие в состав России. Соответственно, исправлять ситуацию нужно в тех регионах, которые пока еще остаются под контролем Киева.
Oh, and just for fun, he even blamed Ukraine for attacking Chernobyl. What's next? Zelensky personally sinking the Moskva? Wait, actually, never mind. And with that, we conclude this edition of Break the Fake. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to Deep Review World.